This is a bold statement, but I'm going to say it anyways. Outside of WWF No Mercy on the Nintendo 64, and trust me, we'll get there may not be a better pick-up-and-play wrestling video game than WWF Wrestlefest. Released in the arcades in 1991, Wrestlefest was and is one of the best wrestling video games that you'll ever play. It checks a lot of boxes that make video games great. Visuals, sound, control, fun. Wrestlefest is one of my most enjoyable experiences in wrestling video games. Let's break down why. First off, some of my all-time favorite wrestlers feature in this game, including the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, Mr. Perfect, Curt Hennig, and the tag team of Demolition. There's also arguably the greatest tag team of that era, the Legion of Doom, in here as well. Though they're not playable characters, still the fact that they're in the game with Demolition sparked a first for the World Wrestling Federation. It marked the first time that a bona fide tag team featured in a WWF game, let alone two. There is one glaring omission for me, and that's Randy Savage. The Macho Man, or Macho King as he was dubbed at the time, was still a main event player for the WWF, and despite his quote-unquote retirement from wrestling later that year, he was still a mainstay in the organization. Also, given his status in all previous iterations of WWF video games, his omission, well, I'm sure there's a reason, but he's definitely missed. That said, it's far from a terrible roster, and even sans Macho Man, Wrestlefest offers up 12 superstars for you to enjoy. The movesets for each wrestler are quite similar, but this time around, finishing moves are much easier to pull off and each character has one. When an opponent's energy is low, he'll lay in a more directional position as opposed to being completely horizontal. With this cue, you'll know whether or not your next grapple will feature your finishing move, or in the case of someone like Hulk Hogan or Earthquake, your running finisher will take place. When players are in that more directionally laid pose on the mat, you'll know that they're fit to be pinned. And what I love about Wrestlefest is the fact that you can have two opponents pile on for the win. It's such a great little detail, but it just adds to the game's overall charm. Speaking of the wrestlers, their sprites are even bigger this time around and gives them that added element of being larger than life, which is what professional wrestlers were portrayed as being, especially at the time. It's nothing too big, but again, it's these little details that make Wrestlefest so enjoyable. This time around, the WWF allows for its branded shows to feature as game modes, as Wrestlefest deploys both Saturday night's main event and the Royal Rumble as playable bouts. Saturday night's main event was a short-lived primetime show on NBC, but was considered the wrestling show to watch as it featured best on best talent, which isn't something you saw on TV, and you normally didn't see it outside of the major events. In Wrestlefest, Saturday night's main event is the same game mode as seen on the previous WWF arcade game Superstars, where you employ a tag team in a quest to become WWF Tag Team Champions. Prior to the start of your first match, you're even introduced by the ring announcer. Wait a minute, who is this woman?
Before JoJo Offerman and Lillian Garcia laced arenas by announcing wrestlers with their golden tones, Mike McGuirk paved the way for future WWF women's announcers. The daughter of famed old-time wrestler Leroy McGuirk and ex-wife of one half of the Killer Bees, B. Brian Blair, Mike McGuirk made her television debut in the World Wrestling Federation in 1987. Growing up in the business, McGuirk started as a timekeeper in the WWF before becoming an announcer for Vince McMahon. Aside from ring announcing and some color commentary, McGuirk also produced some backstage segments. She was with the company for about 8 years before leaving the WWF in 1994.
Much like Superstars, your journey takes you through a series of contending matches before facing, in this case, the champions, the Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal. In a weird but amazing addition to the gameplay, teams now face off in a steel cage match in the third bout of Saturday night's main event. And the cage more than just aesthetic, as it prohibits players from exiting the ring, and being whipped into the ropes results in being slammed into the cage. Now, to the best of my knowledge, tag team cage matches don't really exist in wrestling, aside from having tornado rules, which means everybody in the ring at the same time. But tag team cage matches do exist in Wrestlefest, which is awesome in more ways than one. After 4 successful victories in Saturday night's main event, you go head-to-head with the Legion of Doom, and once again, the amazing cutscenes return.
It's time to fight with a powerful challenge. We snack on danger, dine on death. To bury every gerbil-faced dick we face. Yeah!
Once you defeat the Legion of Doom, Mean Gene Okerlund returns to provide a report on your championship victory, which, again, is a really nice touch. Then, much like Superstars, you continue on to defend your titles, rinse and repeat. The other game mode in Wrestlefest, which is probably the best experience of the game, is the Royal Rumble. Wrestlefest adds another twist on the Royal Rumble match, allowing wrestlers to be pinned or submitted, along with being tossed over the top rope. You don't have to be drained of health to get eliminated over the top, so if you've plunked in your quarter into the machine and get eliminated right away, well, you can imagine how happy that made us back in the early 90s. Regardless, the Royal Rumble match is fantastic, and for the first time, up to 6 wrestlers compete at any given moment, with the last man standing deemed the winner. WWF Wrestlefest may be close to 30 years old, but you'll be hard-pressed to find another wrestling game that will provide a more overall satisfying experience. Sure, the presentation in today's wrestling games are breathtaking, but for 1991, this game was as good as it got, and 27 years later, still holds up as one of the greatest wrestling video games of all time.